Hello and welcome to another Six Sages Gaming Duel Series video. Today we have for you a very special match between a Earth Lightning Golbez list on the left, and Frisco will be joining us playing the Wind Water Yuna Lenne combo. So thank you again to Frisco for joining us for this recording session. And what I love about this video is it's going to show you two very different ways to play the same exact list. And I will mention we were trying to play fast. As we were recording, there was some issue with the memory card we figured out later that said we had only minutes to record. So we're going to be playing some very quick games here. So starting off with the Golbez, a lot of people will think that this is the best turn one for the deck is dropping a Golbez. Honestly, a lot of it does depend on the matchup, and you'll see how I can potentially get punished by it, but certainly Golbez being able to break into four different guys is where the strength comes. It's certainly a form of card advantage. So here our opponent is leading off with the Yuna Lenne combo, and at any time you see this, you have to assume they are playing Bahamut in the list. So his play on the back end would be to just attack, Bahamut away my Golbez, and I am infinitely far behind at that point. So what we decided to do is, maybe a little bit better lucky than good, is we have the Delita in hand. So we can try to maybe play the fair game, just play the Gramus backup we have. That feels awful. So instead we're just going to go for the Delita, break Golbez, and get some more forwards out on our board. The downside here is that we've already discarded two Gapals, so we don't have a reliable way to boost them all and being able to attack through for some damage. So we are going to have to rely on other sources, namely being, say, a Kefka backup or a Black Mage, which can also come in handy. So this way we're forcing our opponent to say, hey, you can kill two of these guys if you want, but you're going to have to attack. You're likely not playing another forward because you don't have any backups unless you dump your whole hand, and then we get to get in at least some points of damage on the crackback. So Frisco here was thinking about the different summons that he's going to be able to get. Obviously, we can all pretty much agree at this point, Bahamut's going to be your best answer just to clear the most things off the board. But you can see in his hand he has a Maria, which he does mistakenly play out of order. We do go back and just say that he could fix that, but ultimately what he'd want to do here is to play the Maria so that Yuna is a 6k on attacking, because otherwise she just dies to the 5k Yuna that we still have. So a lot of discussion going back and forth, just again trying to determine what the best summon is going to be. You can see before he tells me that he decides, I kind of just put Barret and Delita off to the side, because Delita obviously being a 9k, so that's your break target, and then Barret, because it's a 6k, and the biggest body out of the rest of those, where otherwise we just can't block Yuna favorably. So this is a point where we were just going to offer up the trade up if we wanted to, and then he had pointed out that he missed sequence, forgot to play the Maria, so we are going to pretend that he played this correctly and played the Maria. So here you see him discarding two. That's why he's doing this in the middle of combat. Was a mistake on his end, and we're saying that he would just go through it. So at this point, no real point of blocking. We're just going to get 3 points of damage on the back end, and arguably it's just, why would we block there anyways, because we're going to be winning the damage race. So while I had thought originally to just block, get him both off the board, assuming that he's not playing the Maria, realistically it would be better just to take the point of damage, because your life is a resource in this game, and there's absolutely no point of taking or losing a guy if you can just take the point of damage without fear. So here we're playing him on just to hopefully get around what he might play. Also as a note, the other reason why we might want to block with Rigby is, as I was playing this deck, I found that sometimes you do get stuck with having either a Rigby or an Onion Knight on field when you have an Alcid in hand, and then you can't play it because you don't get the value out of it. So I am very keen to killing off on-board Rigby's and Onion Knights whenever it is relevant. So here he pitches 2 to drop a Riku. Interesting note here is that Yuna only protects it from summons, so Amon is still doing a lot of work for us here. And here you're going to see a absolute whiff from me. I forgot that Maria was boosting it to make it a 6k. So again, reason why he killed my Barret earlier. And at this point, I've already committed to this attack. Ideally, it would have been nice just getting the 2 more points of damage, but at the point we're at, we just kind of have to force ourselves to go through the rest of it, so we hopefully didn't lose our guy for no value. And then here, as bad as it feels, we want to be able to get his last guy off the board because Amon is still an 8k attacker himself, and he can fight through if possible, and it makes the Riku smaller, which is also extremely relevant. So there is a point there where we could have just left him back, tap down the Yuna, swing with Zidane to put him to another point of damage and play the slower game that way. But because we don't have resources, because we don't have any backups, we want to just try to push for as much damage as we can, knowing that if we hit another Golbez or something, we're going to be able to get those card advantages back for us. So finally, we find the Kefka that we get to play it back up. Note there about Riku as I was playing it too, and I forgot that Yuna's off field already. Protects it from summons, that does include your own, unfortunately. So if it was still on the table there, even with the EX burst, it would not have worked. So otherwise, we're just staring down a 4-drop 7k, which is certainly not alarming by any standards in this deck. And Kefka is such a key point in the deck because it allows us to trade up with all our 2-drops and just forces in that last point of damage, as you're going to see here very shortly. So Frisco playing the Yuna, just trying to get another one on board. It is an 8k blocker right now. And then hopefully his goal is to see his final Lenne. It's, you know, somewhere in the deck. There's one of the damage, one in the break zone already, and hopefully he will find another one. So not much he can do. He's still in the same position where Amon can just still at least remove one of the blockers if necessary. So here he plays Tidus just to get another forward on the board. It is a 10k because it's getting +2 from having 2 other forwards and another k from Maria. So that helps out considerably. And here we just draw perfectly, honestly, by hitting the last Gapal in the deck and resources to use it. So curving out exactly as we need to in this deck. Playing the Gapal here allows us to force 2 of his guys off the board without punishment. Again, he is at 6. He does have to block. And then Kefka is always the option as well. So small mistake on his end because he is losing 2 guys. Depending on which 2 of you want to play around getting a Blitz Ace or something. He should have blocked with Riku first because it's bigger, and then Yuna could have battled it out that way. So have to save the Riku for when it's going to be bigger. Again, in this case, losing 2 guys pretty much no matter what because we have the Kefka, but at least it might have forced us to use the Kefka in some instance instead. Or with the Tidus, rather. So here you can see that he has 2 cards in hand, really not going to be able to do anything. He could play the Larsa, actually, if he wanted to, but Amon will tap down Tidus and then just get through for the last game. So now we're going to be going into game 2. That was me checking the camera. We had about 10 minutes to record this match at this point. So we played a very, very quick match. I think it was like 12 minutes exactly that was left. So we wanted to get another game in camera for you guys. That's why we will not have a game 3. And looks like Frisco here has a bit of an interesting hand for what we can see of it. I do like that he is playing the starter Tidus as well because, again, you are playing Riku and Yuna for. There's a lot of 10 drops, so you can play a really cheap Tidus when needed. There we see the Leviathan as well, which can certainly help out. Again, if you know you're playing against Golbez, by delaying them a turn and making them burn a lot of resources for it as well. So discarding Lenne here feels very bad. When you're playing a deck that's built around a combo and you're discarding one of the 3 pieces, it certainly doesn't feel great. And I can't see what the other cards are in his hand per se, so maybe that was his best option. But at that point, you're pretty much just saying you don't believe that you're going to get the combo. So here we just drop 3 again and play Golbez. Again, usually not the auto way to go if I'm playing against water. Generally, what I like to do is lead with the Al-Cid combo if possible and perhaps play a backup just because it gets one of their guys off the table. And generally speaking, we're still going to hit through for 2 points of damage thanks to Al-Cid. So knowing that he's already played 1 Leviathan, we could simply just slam down the Golbez again. Only has 2 cards in hand. We also have a Black Mage, which is a great card in this matchup when he doesn't hit Minwu. Obviously, Minwu is a kind of a bad spot for us, but Black Mage is a very relevant backup in a lot of matchups because you can do some easy pings with either Rigby or Barrett and then use Black Mage to finish them off for very cheap. So discarding the Amon here feels pretty bad, but we know we need to keep the Odin for a thing like Tidus or any kind of other big threats because we're trying to play a longer game now, and we need to make sure that we can play a Golbez. It's not going to just die to a Yuna Lenne combo. Yes, we're a little bit safer with that right now because he discarded 1 early, but we still want to reserve that. And then we want to hold on to the Rigby as well because we hold Gramis in our hand, which will allow us to tutor up Al-Cid and then be able to kill whatever he plays. So this is pretty much exactly what we would want to see in this situation. So we're going to be able to play the tutor, get a card back to our hand. If we have to kill a Yuna, I'd certainly much rather kill that one, and it's going to allow us to put 2 forwards on the field. Again, sometimes when water, you just don't have the forward count that you might like, so being able to pick off some of their key threats is certainly going to help you out quite a bit. The other reason why I'm going to decide to do it here is because our opponent discarded a Minwu. Knowing how important it is in this matchup, if my opponent discards a Minwu and didn't play one, I just immediately have to assume that they have another Minwu in play. So simply giving him the turn and passing without playing the Al-Cid could potentially just turn it off for the rest of the game, and that's not a great spot at all for us to be in. So here we unfortunately have to discard the Odin and the Amon. Again, we want to keep the Golbez because on our next turn, regardless of what we draw, which we hopefully draw very poorly, we can discard them to play the Golbez. Now again, our opponent's not really threatening us. We have 2 forwards that we can then party attack and trade up if we need to, and then we can slam the Golbez, which will allow us to have a 9k threat on the table with the potential to break into 4 more units. So him playing Aerith here, which is going to allow him to protect one of his guys. So now we have to be very careful about what we're going to Odin or use other abilities for the rest of the game. So here we decide between, do I play the red mage and just try to build up our resources since we're fairly ahead at this point, or do we just slam down the Golbez and try to make the most of it? Here again, we decide that we're trying to understand that our opponent apparently doesn't have the Minwu at this point, and we need to make use of our Black Mage while we can. So by playing it this way, we can party attack if we need to, or we can just swing with Rigby, threaten the Black Mage, kill his best guy, swing with the other 2, and then again, Golbez just being a 9k is likely going to kill something, especially against a Wind Water deck, which typically has under power to curve ratio, which immensely helps Golbez. So here he's just going to bounce the Golbez again, make us fairly sad. But again, we're in the same exact position where no matter what we draw, we're going to just be able to play it again. Our opponent is going to be taking 2 points of damage, and we're not losing as much tempo as you might expect with Leviathan. So while yes, Leviathan is certainly a great card against Golbez in very specific instances, this was not one of them. So we have another Barret and a Sage, and at this point it feels pretty terrible. So Barret's S effect lets us deal 2,000 damage to everything. I can make an entire other video about all the different combos that Barret has with his special and Rigby and Black Mage and El Cid and Onion Knight. He does a lot for the deck, but we are going to say that for another time. So here we're playing Sage just to get Naman back. So again, this is the power of El Cid. If our opponent, yes, drawing a little bit poorly, but we do have answers on the table to whatever he's going to play. So even in this instance, we could attack with Rigby first, threaten the Black Mage, make him lose his guy, and then attack with El Cid for a point of damage anyways. And in this case, he's even missing the Maria, so it doesn't matter that it's a 5k to 5k. Kind of as I mentioned here, we do find ourselves being stuck with extra Rigby's or El Cid combo pieces, so we just discard that to the Amon, get in 2 more points of damage, and put our opponent to 6. So this is where we can realize that it's going to be very hard for him to come back at this point because we only need to get in 1 more point of damage. We have the Black Mage on the table, which means Rigby is going to just be able to trade up with whatever he wants to on the table. Amon can doll a guy, and then El Cid gets through for the last point of damage. So in this case, unless our opponent is able to flood the field, we just have lethal on board. Again, even assuming that our opponent plays 1 forward, so it'd have to be 2 forwards, a forwards, and a bounce spell, something to that effect. And it's hard to see what's in his hand at this point, but we do learn that there's a Belias, a Cosmos, and a Lenne. So in a perfect world, what he would have been able to do if he had 1 more card was to play the Lenne, Belias it, attack with the combo, use Bahamut, but then he's still short a card to make that interaction work, where he can then untap everything and have another reliable blocker. So he's certainly just a few pieces away from being able to live the dream, if you will, with the unexpected Belias into Yuna Lenne combo. And that's why he's trying to sequence his turn just to see if he has it. But unfortunately just doesn't have enough resources for it. So here he's playing the Lenne just to have a blocker, and then he realizes that yes, he has Belias in his hand, but it doesn't do anything for him. Because again, he could attack with both, break Lenne, get rid of my 2 best guys, and then just dies to the last forward that's on the table. An interesting note here is that because it does give plus 1,000 power in first strike, it would have been really great on defense here as well. That could have maybe bought him a turn. So again, here we see all the different ways that he can. So this is where I made quite a silly play, and I was rushing because at this point I knew there was only about 2 minutes left of recording. I had lethal about 3 different ways in this, so we missed something here. Aerith should have activated Lenne as well here, so he had an extra blocker where I could have just party attacked instead. If I would have sequenced this backwards, it would have worked in my favor, but let me know in the comments below if you guys can spot the other 2 ways I had lethal and missed it. So even assuming that we had caught this in this instance, I simply just party attack, play the other cards from my hand, and our opponent's gonna have a very hard time to come back from that. So we attack, we realize, hit the last point of damage, and that's where he shows us the second, the Cosmos. So that's all we have for this video. Hope you guys enjoy it. Make sure to drop a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and we'll catch you on the next 6 Sages Gaming video.